Good afternoon. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Business, Housing, and Zoning Committee for October 8, 2024. I'm Jamal Osman, and I'm the chair of this committee. Before we begin this meeting, I want to offer a friendly reminder that all council members and the public that this meeting are broadcasted live to enable greater public participation. This broadcast include real-time captioning as further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the state of their speech so that our captioners can truly capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all the speakers to moderate their speed and clarify their comments. Colleagues, I would like to note that our agenda is very full today and we need to adjourn no later than 4 p.m. We will be using speaker management for this meeting, so please make sure you are signed to participate in discussion. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum.
Councilmember Rainville.
Present.
Cashman.
Present.
Jenkins.
Present.
Chowdhury.
Present.
Vice Chair Ellison.
Here.
Chair Osman.
Present.
There are 6 members present.
Thank you. Let the record reflect we have a quorum. Before we move on, for our published agenda, Councilmember Allison has proposed additional to our consent agenda to add a scheduling public hearing for the Affordable Housing Preservation Ordinance, and you have the RSC before you, Councilmember Allison.
Thank you. Yes, would just like to add on this item. It's simply setting a public hearing date for October 22nd, 2024 for the Affordable Housing Preservation Ordinance, which was previously known as the Affordable Housing Right of First Refusal Ordinance, which is also colloquially known as Community Opportunity to Purchase, or COPA. So a lot of names for this ordinance, a lot of years working on this, but this is going to set the public hearing for that for October 22nd.
Thank you. On that motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The motion carries and the agenda is amended. Items 1 through 12 are on the consent agenda. Item 4 is 15 liquor license renewal. Item 5 is 3 gambling license approval. Item 6 is approving commemorative street name addition to Ania Allen Avenue to a portion of 36th Avenue North. Item 7 is a legislative directive regarding the food vendor location, options, and regulations. Item 8 is approving 2023 Emergency Solution Grant Fund for Essential Services and Shelter Operations. Item 9 is updating legal description in the body of Resolution 2022 R-148. Item 10 is approving a land swipe between the city and Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority. Item 11 is accepting and authorizing Spring 2024 Brownfield grants. Item 12 is approving comprehensive plan amendment for the properties located at 1626 and 1628 Washington Street Northeast. Item 13 is on the agenda, will be scheduling for a public hearing for Affordable Housing Preservation Ordinance for October 22nd, 2024. Would anyone would like to pull any of these items for questions or further discussions? Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Osman. I am not pulling an item. I just wanted to speak to number 7, food vendor location options and regulations. This is a legislative directive that's brought forward by me and Councilmember Chavez, who's in the committee today. And essentially, we have been working with our community, our city staff, in really determining what are ways in which we can help the local fruit vendors, food vendors, primarily our immigrant community, find ways for economic empowerment in vending foods to residents within our city. I encourage colleagues to take a look at the legislative directive. We worked in partnership with DCCO Jelly and our health department in determining how we can find information around potential locations, looking at the licenses that presently exist, looking at how fines and citations are currently issued. And the goal of this is really to lead us in a way where we're equitably empowering local entrepreneurs in our community that deserve to have an opportunity to sell and vend in compliance and deserve the support of the city of Minneapolis. And I'm sure Councilmember Chavez has more to add on top of that, but I wanted to bring that forward and speak to it a little bit.
Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Osmond, and thank you for allowing me to attend as a guest of this committee. And very excited to bring this legislative directive forward with Councilmember Chowdhury related to food vendors and options for expanding the number of locations for permitted food vendors. On May 9th, 2024, my office and Councilmember Chowdhury gave notice of intent related to establishing a new sidewalk cart and street vending program. And since then, we have been working with staff on a pathway to establish a new license to better support food vendors with establishment of a new program in the city of Minneapolis. The hope is that this directive will set us on a pathway to pass an ordinance before spring of 2025 to ensure that there are permits for community members to apply for and to be able to sell their food freely. And I want to get into a little bit of the details of what this directive is and what it does. Number one, it would provide an overview of food vendor safety regulations, including but not limited to the role of the Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and the City of Minneapolis. It will provide an overview of licenses and regulations for food vendors in the City of Minneapolis. It will provide an overview of outreach and engagement efforts for potential food vendors. It will provide a map detailing the locations where permitted food vendors can operate. And it will provide options for expanding the number of locations for permitted food vendors via a new ordinance. My office and Councilmember Chowdhury's office have been meeting with some of these food vendors and immigrant justice organizations to ensure that we find a pathway for these vendors to be able to sell. We have heard multiple concerns from community members about how expensive licenses can be, how current food vendors are currently getting the police called on them and sent to them and getting fines and citations that are up to $250 because they are trying to sell this food and make a living. And this has led us to add additional language to this directive that I just wanted the public to know what it talks about. It's going to add options for an equitable fee system, including a subsidy program to make it affordable and waiving all first-year fees. This could include a fee study that is comparable to other municipalities. The options for accessibility and access of the licensing process to everyone, regardless of immigration status and language barriers, consistent with existing City of Minneapolis and State of Minnesota licensing and regulatory requirements. And last, information on the and breakdown of fines and citations issued to unlicensed food vendors in 2023 and 2024. My office met with 15 food vendors on Sunday, and I had to listen to the stories that these immigrant food vendors in particular had to share. The trauma that they are experiencing of getting the police called on them, chased around the city just because they want to make a living and try to pay for their food, pay for their rent. And it was really heartbreaking to continue to hear the stories of folks saying, some of them who have green cards and just can't have any other job. And they're still selling fruit and food to try to make a living, even though they have a permit to work in this city. But they can't find any job because of the horrible job market that we're in right now. So they're also doing this work. And they're doing this so they can pay for their food, they can pay for their rent, and this is the only job that they have access to. So the goal of this legislative directive is to help us find a pathway to make sure that folks have a permit, that are working to address the public health concerns that people have, but most importantly, folks deserve to have employment opportunities. Folks deserve to be able to have a job that pays for their living, their expenses, allows them to have their family be able to survive. And when I hear about folks getting $250 citations for trying to survive, that is just something I will never support, I will never stand for, and I just doesn't feel good. And making sure that we can pass this ordinance when it comes before the spring to make sure that folks are able to survive is a bare minimum that we can do. So very proud to bring this forward with Councilmember Chowdhury. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. I have a question for one of the authors. At what point will the park board be brought into the discussion? They have expressed concerns about this.
I can answer that if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Osman. Councilmember Rainville, can you explain the specific concerns, what you are hearing?
Well, a lot of these vendors are operating on park board land. So, at what point are they allowed to give input in this? Is it through the public hearing process? Will your staff be reaching out to them? What can I tell the commissioners?
For sure. I mean, the issue right here, Chair Osman, thank you. That we can't control park board policies. The park board can establish their own program if they wish. We are focused on a city policy, a city ordinance for the municipalities that will not control or dictate the park board. My hope is that the park board addresses this issue and allows vendors to be able to sell in their parks, because I think that folks should be able to make a living, should be able to sell their fruit and food. But the park board can address that on their own policy making process. The goal is to make sure that the city establishes its own process, and then the park board is also part of this process, so it can be both a municipal city council, city of Minneapolis, along with the park board. But the park board should be addressing this concern through their own policy-making process too.
Okay, but you're saying two different things. You said that the goal is to have them be part of the process, but on the other hand, you're saying it should be separate. So my question is just very basic. At what point are they going to be allowed to give input into what is being proposed?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is that the park board should come up with locations that they allow folks to be able to sell their food and fruit. The city of Minneapolis should also come up with locations. We are working on our part as the city of Minneapolis. We don't get to tell the park board what to do. But the goal is that they should be working together, and the park board should most definitely find parks for people to be able to sell and stop chasing people around.
Okay, so to facilitate that goal, we're all agreeing here. Do you expect our staff to reach out to them? Are they going to be allowed? Should we advise them to come to the public hearing? What do you suggest? How do we bring them into this conversation?
I'll just finish one and then I'll pass it to you, Councilmember Chowdhury, if that's okay. Chair Osman, we have been meeting with folks in the park board. Our staff has been meeting with the park board as well. One of the things that the park board asks of our offices is to find locations in the city of Minneapolis, and that is exactly what we're doing.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Chowdhury.
Yeah, thank you through the chair, and I apologize, my speaker management technology is not working today. Just kind of adding to what Councilmember Chavez said, Councilmember Rainville, just want to be really clear with you, we have been meeting with the park board commissioners, have had conversations with them. This has been work that we have been doing for the last, I would say, this is our second year going into it. So Councilmember Chavez, when I was working in his office, we had meetings between our staff here in the city and staff at the park board. So those initial conversations have happened and have continued. A big part of the role that the park board has communicated is helping ensure that those who are vending within the parks and within our city are brought to compliance, especially around the oversight around public health. And that's exactly what we want to do here, is make sure that entrepreneurs in our city, primarily immigrants who have been made invisible, have an opportunity to come into compliance and be a part of this programming, because community members within our parks really have enjoyed having vendors in certain parts of the city available there. And so we'll continue to have those conversations. And I encourage you to definitely reach out to your park board commissioner in wanting to be a good partner, but just want to be very clear. We have been pursuing a path in which we've had conversations with park board staff and our city staff. And I think this legislative directive will actually provide a lot of clarity and information to continue that engagement and further the conversation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I put myself in there. I just want to be quick that I want to thank Councilmember Chavez and Chowdhury for bringing this forward. I think that they identify the issue, and we're here to make that solution. And let's just remind everyone that street food and vendors are like worldwide phenomenon, and I think the city of Minneapolis should catch up. And with that, Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Osman. Just wanted to thank Councilmember Chavez and Councilmember Chowdhury for bringing this. I did participate in a meeting with their offices and with the health department and with the park board commissioners to talk about how to address the safety and the ability of the food vendors that are currently vending in our city, and the locations came up as just the top sticking point. And so I appreciate that you're looking at what is the city's jurisdiction, what's our right of way, our sidewalks, our other public spaces that we have control over. How can we enable these businesses to operate in those spaces? And I specifically brought up some city-owned public spaces in Ward 7, like PV Plaza, and in downtown especially, we are looking for ways to activate our public spaces. We're actively looking to bring people to Nicollet Mall in a process of pedestrianizing Nicollet Mall. And so I'm really interested in how can we enable more street food, sidewalk vendors, et cetera, in the public spaces of our downtown to serve the tourism community that's, coming to our event centers, convention center, et cetera, and are looking for food options as well. So excited to learn more through the process of this legislative directive.
Right. Seeing none, I will move approval for the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Next, we have a public hearing for an application from Stone Garden for on-sale liquor with Sunday sales, no live entertainment. License, I'll ask Akbar Mohammed from the license to give us that presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Osman and committee members. I am Akbar Mohammed with Licensing and Consumer Services. I'm presenting the application from Stone Garden LLC, doing business as Stone Garden, located at 5401 Chicago Ave in Ward 11. Stone Garden will serve breakfast, brunch, and lunch, chef-driven menu with a beverage program, non-alcoholic and alcoholic, presented in a fine dining approach to service. The proposed hours of operation are for the interior will be Monday through Sunday, daily, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. They have indoor seating for 134 patrons. On September 18th, 198 public hearing notices were sent to the property owners within 600 feet of the premises. Notices were also sent to the Hale Page Diamond Lake Community Association and Councilmember Koski. We have received 2 comments from the committee. 2 are in support. A review of any complaints, 311 calls, police calls, and operating conditions show no significant issues concerning the business or issuance of this license. The License and Consumer Services Division recommends approval of an on-sale liquor, no entertainment, with Sunday sales. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I will stand for comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And now I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing, and our first speakers are Andrew and Bailey Novak.
Hi there, everybody. First time doing this, so appreciate your patience and letting me come up here and speak with you all. I'm Andrew. My wife is joining me here today as well. We are the owners of Stone Garden. This is our first restaurant that we're putting together. Fantastic location, 54th in Chicago, Hale neighborhood. Met with Councilmember Koski as well. Absolutely fantastic. I had a chance to just sit down and speak with her and kind of share a little bit of the vision. As Mr. Mohammed stated, that's the idea of what we're trying to do. It's kind of an everyday elevated brunch experience, taking that from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., essentially kind of doing craft cocktails. We want to be able to do things like that. We've been very fortunate to have some fantastic colleagues throughout our years of working in the service industry. That's where we've been working for the last 15 plus years each. So very experienced in this capacity. And we've got a great program that we're putting together. I think the neighborhood is, well, at least from what they've told us, very excited to have something like this in the neighborhood, to be able to offer things like this. So we're just here being able to kind of present and say, thanks for considering us. And cheers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there anyone who would like to speak? See none, I'll close the public hearing and call Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you guys for, coming to the city. Thank you for doing business in the city. And I'm sure this neighborhood is going to be, welcome and happy to have you guys. And so I'm happy to move approval, and good luck with all your endeavors here.
Thank you. Really, truly appreciate it, everybody.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Osman. I too just want to offer congratulations.
Thank you.
54th in Chicago, is that near Heather's then?
A couple of blocks away, actually. Yes, it is.
Okay, all righty.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great location, so good luck and look forward to coming for brunch one
Please
of
do.
these days.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no one else to speak, with the motion to approve, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Our next item is an appeal hearing regarding decision of the Zoning Board of Adjustment to require provision of sign areas credited with an opportunity billboard district. At the request of the appellant, we are going to continue this item to the business meeting in October 2022. However, since we have noticed the hearing for this date, we will allow anyone who would like to come and testify an opportunity to speak. So I'm going to open, to proceed to open the public hearing. Are there anyone who would like to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to continue to the hearing on October 22nd. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Our next item is an appeal hearing regarding decision of the City Planning Commission to approve variance in front yard requirement and the site plan review application for residential building 505 Lindell Avenue. I will call Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Osman and fellow committee members, I will be reclusing myself from this matter due to a conflict of interest and will not be participating in the consideration or determination of this appeal.
Thank you, Councilmember Rainville. I'll ask May Ling Smith from Seabed Planning to give us that presentation. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Osman and committee members. My name is May Ling Smith from Seabed Planning, and the project before you is 5005 Lindale Avenue South. The zoning that applies to this site is the UN3 district, as well as the Corridor 4 Built Form Overlay District and the Airport Overlay District. As you can see, it's at the intersection of 50th Street West and Lindale Avenue South in Ward 11. This is a rendering of the proposed development, and it's a 4-story building with 20 dwelling units, 33 below grade parking spaces, 20, actually I think it's 31 below grade parking spaces, 20 bike parking spaces. The parking entrance faces 50th Street, and then there are townhomes lining Lindale Avenue South. The exterior materials here would be white brick, off-white stucco, and a terracotta material. The applications that are required are a variance to reduce the corner side, the reverse corner yard along 50th from 31 feet to 15 feet, and I'll have a diagram in a bit to show you where that is, as well as site plan review for the new building. So again, here are the applicable setbacks. So there is a front yard setback requirement along Lindale, which runs to the west of the site. The applicant is proposing to meet that fully for the 15 feet. And then because of the irregular platting of this site, there are two applicable front yard requirements here. So we call that a reverse corner. And that means that they are subject to a 31-foot setback to match their neighbor to the east. They are proposing to meet the 15-foot setback, which would normally be required for this district, but not the full 31 feet, and so that's why the variance is required. They are proposing to meet the corner side yard setback along 50th and the east and the south applicable setbacks as well. So this was previously proposed to the Planning Commission and City Council last year. And at that time, the applicant had proposed a building that was set back 4 feet from 50th Street instead of the 10 feet that was required in the section that you see here in red. So there you can see that was where the variance was requested just for the corner side yard. So this has been updated. They've eliminated the need for that variance, but they've retained the need for the reverse corner side yard setback, the reverse corner front yard requirement, which is in the northeast corner, and that's the blue shaded box that you see in the diagram. So where the code requires 31 feet, the applicant is proposing 15 feet, which matches Lindale. And so here's the site plan for the updated project, and you can see that the corner side yard setback is satisfied at the 10 feet requirement, and then 31 feet is still being varied. Here's an image where you can see where that cutout is. So basically what we're talking about is the garage door entry. So that's where they're proposing 15 feet, where 31 is required. They did have a little bit of alternative compliance, but actually reduced the amount of alternative compliance that was necessary compared to last year. We have been supportive of this variance for the reverse corner front yard, and the Planning Commission supported it as well. We believe that, or we find that because of the irregular platting, which was a combination of 3 smaller parcels, that there are challenges that exist in complying with the ordinance that don't have only to do with what the applicant is proposing. They're trying to meet the intent of having a front yard on 2 sides of the property, and if they were to comply with the 31-foot setback, it would severely limit the buildable options on the property. So as you can see, the Planning Commission did approve the variance and the site plan review on September 16th. An appeal has been received, and I believe the appellant and the applicant are here to speak today. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you so much. We will have the questions after the public hearing.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing, and I will first allow the appellant up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Welcome. Please state your name.
Thank you very much, council members. My name is John Goetz, Goetz. I am the appellant. I have lived in Minneapolis all of my life, most of it in southwest Minneapolis. I do not live in the immediate vicinity of this intersection, but I don't live far away, and I have not lived far away for I don't know how many years. I live further west on 50th Street, or just off 50th Street. But I have been familiar with the intersection since as a driver going both on Lindale and on 50th, and as a patron of the businesses in the area, and as a friend of many students of the there's 2 schools just to the east, the middle school and the high school. So I'm very familiar with it. I've been driving through it since I got my driver's license in 1962. So I'm intimately familiar with the traffic patterns, the neighborhood, the buildings, and the entire flow of both pedestrian and vehicle traffic. I'd like to emphasize not just vehicular traffic, but pedestrian traffic, because you do have 2 large schools just a block or 2 to the east. A lot of students passing on foot through this intersection every day. And you have a great deal of commercial traffic for the numerous shops just west of the intersection on 50th Street. Most famously maybe the malt shop, but many others also. That makes it an already somewhat dangerous intersection. It just gets a lot of traffic. Both 50th and Lindale carry traffic which often exceeds the speed limit. It's just the nature of those streets. The intersection is already congested. It's already, to a large degree, unsafe. This building is simply going to aggravate these problems. It's too big in terms of the number of units, the number of people, and the number of vehicles that it will allow. It will drastically or severely impair the safety of the intersection, both for occupants of vehicles and for pedestrians. Beyond that, it's simply outsized for the neighborhood. It's bigger than anything in the immediate vicinity. It simply doesn't belong there from a point of view of neighborhood cohesion. So on those grounds, I oppose it and have filed this appeal. I am represented in this matter by Attorney Timothy Keene, and I would ask that he speak next. There will be other witnesses, I believe, supporting the appeal. There are also numerous comments in the record from supporters of the appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome, sir. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, is that clock for me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm here appearing on behalf of Appellant John Getz in the matter of the variances and site plan approval for 5005 Lindale Avenue South. Zoning ordinances and standards, rules, and regulations are codified into law, into your ordinance. But at their heart, zoning regulations are the foundation of a social covenant. I agree to reasonable restrictions on my property, and you agree to reasonable restrictions on yours. Variances are requests to deviate from those standards. You're the gatekeeper. You determine when the rules should be bent or broken to allow a property owner to put their property use that others are not allowed. In the present case, we are subject to the practical difficulty standard that has 3 elements: reasonableness, uniqueness, and essential character. This property can be put to reasonable use without granting a variance. The uniqueness standard and the staff really wrestled in their findings to come up with something unique about this property. There's nothing unique about this property. It's a rectangle. It's an 11,500 square foot rectangle, flat as a tabletop. This can be easily built on without variances. And to cast aside the standards without a foundation of uniqueness and reasonableness and respecting the essential character of the neighborhood just does great violation to your zoning ordinance, especially as it applies to property owners that do abide by those standards. And based upon the foregoing, we respectfully request that the variance and site plan approvals appeal be granted.
Thank you so much. Next person is Brianna Rothstein. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brianne Rothstein. I live at 3816 Garfield Avenue, and I'm here to speak in support of upholding the decision of the Planning Commission and of staff. I, too, just like John, grew up in South Minneapolis and was driving down 50th and Lindale when I got my license as well. It was not in the 1960s, but was almost 30 years ago, which I can't believe. However, I've lived in Wyndham and I've lived in Kenny, and now I live in Kingfield. And I drive by 50th and Lindale every single day, multiple times a day, with kids getting schlepped from here to there. And I just want to take 1 minute to share some history that you all are very probably familiar with. But I want to go back to the Boulevard, which is a housing project that was done on 53rd and Lindale, and I can't remember the date, and I couldn't Google it because it was that long ago. But it was the early 2000s, and that project had massive opposition by the neighbors and ended up getting constructed and has been a very great contribution to the neighborhood in many, many ways. And I've seen it over the years now, over almost 20 years, provide needed housing for our residents. Then follow that up with Creekside Commons, as well as Aubrey, Rosa, Lilypad, Zest, just to name a few of these amazing missing middle projects in Kingfield and the surrounding Kenny and Tangletown and Wyndham neighborhoods. I think I just want to point these out because at no point was there a massive change in traffic patterns. No children died, and parking was accommodated or has been accommodated in all of these projects, most of which received massive opposition. My time's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I realize that applicant have not signed up, so I will give applicant the opportunity to speak. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter, council members. My name is Todd Smith, and I'm a principal at a local real estate development company, Master Properties. Although the focus today is determining the merits of the appellate's claim versus the Planning Commission's approval by consent on September 26, having been involved with this site for some time as the applicant, I thought perhaps I could share a few facts regarding the appropriateness of the setback for this building. Mailing, can I get the other image? Can I get this? That's what I wanted. Thank you. This image shows the placement of the building in context with the neighborhood, both on the block face of 50th Street as well as all four corners of the intersection. Although this building is built Form 4, it is set back further than any of the other existing three corners. It is in line with the majority of structures on the 50th Street block space. The measurements that are shown here are from the curb to the building structure, because really that's how you feel it when you're walking or biking or driving, and some of the setbacks on these different properties are at the back of the sidewalk versus further back. So secondly, I'd like to reference the Muni Code 540-850, which was effective on July 1st of 2023. It's about front yard requirements in urban neighborhoods and residential mixed-use districts. Section B, front yard increased interior built form overlay districts. Mei-Ling, can you switch to the other slide, please?
Chrome browser?
Thank you. Sorry, guys, don't know how the computer works. The required front yard shall be increased in the interior built form overlay districts where the established front yard of the closest principal building, originally designed for residential purposes located on the same block face on either side of the property, exceeds the front yard requirement by the zoning district. This is such a case, if you remember back to the first slide. In determining an increase in the required front yard, one of the nearest principal residential structures may be removed from consideration where such structure exceeds the established front yard of any other such building on the same block face by 25 feet or more, and there are no more than 4 structures on the same block, including the proposed structure. In such case, the next nearest principal building, originally designed for residential purposes, shall be incorporated in determining the increased front yard. So if you look at the slide, going from the proposed footprint moving east along 50th, you can see how our building is aligned. And not just for the first 25 feet, but for the first 39 feet with the setback of the other 2 homes on that block face, as well as the 15 feet that Mei-Ling referenced earlier. My third point, I'd like to point out the staff findings supporting the variance. So planning staff generated report recommending approval of the variance. In the interest of time, let me summarize the findings, but the report in its entirety is available to you in the staff report. In regards to challenging circumstances, challenges exist in complying with the ordinance because of unique circumstances. The applicant is trying to meet the intent of the ordinance and match the residential character along 2 street frontages. In order to avoid the variance, the applicant would need to match the neighboring property's established setback of 31 feet, which is a substantial increase relative to the standard 15-foot yard requirement. Complying with the technical requirements of the zoning code would severely limit the buildable area. The second is a reasonable manner. As such, the proposal is keeping within the spirit and intent of the ordinance and comp plan. And the third will not alter the essential character. And again, the staff report states it will not be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the general public or those utilizing the property or nearby. So in turning to the appeal and the claim that there are no challenges unique to the property, it's contrary to the staff recommendation and the Planning Commission's unanimous approval. Second, the property owner had noticed the setbacks requirements prior to the purchase and the design of the product. We didn't. No one did. We purchased the property in April of 2022. The 2040 comp plan had been approved, but the zoning updates, as you know, had not followed up. And we all know that the comp plan was under litigation for quite some time. The setback rules were codified in July of 2023. Third, the variance will reduce the site triangle of visibility for vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists, creating greater danger of conflict. As demonstrated in the first slide, this building is set back further than any other structure at the intersection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to continue the list. Mary Collins from Triangle Town neighborhood. Welcome.
Hi, council members. My name is Mary Collins from Tangletown, and I have concerns with the development. First being the heavy traffic congestion and the pedestrian traffic, which is very high in volume, with not only the two schools on the east, but we also have one on the west and one on the south. So we have 4 neighboring schools, heavy traffic and pedestrian, and then also the environmental concerns with the scale of the building, with the emissions, no green space, lack of runoff, and then also the not fitting with the character of the neighborhood due to the height. It will be blocking views and sunlight and shadowing neighbors' homes for those reasons. And then with the comments about the boulevard towers, that's in a business district, and so it's, fits that business district. And then the creek side, that has a 50-plus foot setback. It has a very large, expansive green space in front of it. And so for the reasons of the scale of the build and the traffic and pedestrian concerns, I would like to see the property be built within the defined property lines and not granting any variances. And thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. And next on the list is Lori Hilling.
I'm Lori Helling. I live at 5005 Aldrich. And I just want to first say that really it's not 5005 Lindale, it's 5,000 to 5,011 Lindale. So that is misleading in terms to the neighborhood, in terms of how many people have responded, just thinking that it's 5005. That's a whole different ballgame. 3 lots is a lot different than the 1. I live on 5005 Aldrich, and I hear the traffic noise, the number of accidents, the number of tire screeching. It's always been a tough intersection. And I'm repeating myself, or repeating some of the others, because we have the 4 schools, 2 are elementary, and then the junior high and senior high schools. Kids bike and walk. And also the city has done a lot of work to encourage people to bike. And so they do in that neighborhood. There's people, lots of people on bikes with kids in carriers, and they're exposed. And I mean, the visibility is already terrible in at that intersection. Lindale, Aldrich, Bryant, and Garfield Avenues already absorb the parking for the wonderful businesses that are along 50th. Garfield, you can't even drive through it in the winter. So other thing concerning is to have the elevators down for garages. Power outages happen all the time on our block and the opposite block. So it's just not one power outage, but there's power outages that will affect that community, and that's a problem too. And I also just wonder why you only contact people that live within 350 feet of the building. Lyndhurst and Tangletown, along with other neighborhoods, are also impacted. Why aren't they informed?
Thank you so much. Are there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? See none, I'll close the public hearing and call Councilmember Allison.
Thank you, Chair Osmond. I am going to move to deny this appeal, and usually I'd leave it at that, but I did want to make just a few comments.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I did want to make just a few comments. Our staff came up here and gave us their analysis for why, and the thought process, not only of their analysis, but also the Planning Commission for why this was appropriate. Mr. Getz, in your presentation, we expect to hear a counter that is responsive to the facts. And instead, we got from yourself and your lawyer, oh, give me a break, it's a rectangle. That's not germane to the facts. And so, I expect a little bit more substance if you're going to come up here and disparage sort of the thought process of staff, then come with your argument. But instead, you came up here with no argument. And so I would hope that in the future, if you're going to come and bring this kind of appeal, that you would just come with reviewing the code, looking at what's going on, and not just using your own working definition of unique to try to make a legal argument in something like this in a quasi-judicial matter. So that's just my advice to you. Otherwise, I'm happy to make to deny this appeal and uphold the Planning Commission and staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Councilmember Allison. I will call Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Osmond. This development is not in my ward. It's a few blocks away. But I do know that there are several developments all along 50th that provide multi-family housing opportunities. There are several really important projects along Lindale that some were referenced earlier. The lily pad, the Akeem, there's 100 units being developed at 31st and Nicollet, also along Lindale. And so one of the things that have added to the realities that Minneapolis has been able to maintain rents, keeping them at a somewhat affordable place is because we've been able to increase density in our city. And this project meets the standards, the recommendation from staff, and so I will be supporting the staff recommendation today to deny this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jenkins. Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Osmond. Wondering if Mei-Ling could answer a couple of questions. Really just wondering what would need to constitute unique circumstances in this case of the lot in order for the staff to recommend a variance in this case?
Chair Osmond, Councilmember Cashman, I wonder if you could could you just maybe ask the question again? Because we are recommending approval for the variance. Are you saying what would it take to deny?
So your recommendation for approval is based on a unique nature of the lot, right?
Yes.
So what constitutes unique in this case?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so this property originally was 3 different parcels, so 2 of them were facing Lindale, and then there was another wedged in between those 2 properties that run east-west, and then it kind of matched like this property to the east. So that one was running north-south. So those 3, because of the way that was platted originally, we consider it to have 2 front yards. Normally, if you're in a corner lot, you would have 1 front yard and 1 corner side yard. In this case, we have to say that it's also a continuation of the front yard of the property to the east. So because of that, we're saying this has 2 front yards, and that has the extra requirement of saying you have to match the 31 feet. That matches the footprint of the property to the east. So because of that situation, it has really deep setbacks for both sides. If it was just a corner side the whole entire way, they would only have to do a 10-foot setback from the property line along 50th, whereas here they have to do a 31-foot setback for a portion of that because they're right next to that front yard.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to understand how staff recommendation for denial of the variance is now a staff recommendation for approval of the variance, given the changes in upholding 2040. Can you explain what happened there? Because I wasn't on the committee last year when this came up.
Thank you, Chair Osman and Councilmember Cashman. So last year, the project was a different project altogether because it had a different setback along 50th. It was proposed to be 4 feet, and that required a variance that we didn't feel was supportable. We felt that that variance was created solely by the applicant, that they could just set it back to 10 feet, and that would be a reasonable outcome. So we did not support the variance at that time, and because it would have required major changes to the overall project, we also recommended denial of the site plan review at that time in 2023. And yes, also since this application came in, the lawsuit, the court order has been resolved. So, but the reason that we denied the project last time was really it was pertaining to that variance that they've changed and eliminated.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm understanding this to be a variance that staff supports for the sake of trying to accommodate housing on this property. And so I appreciate you doing your due diligence here and explaining it to us. And we do want to be able to create missing middle housing. This is a problem on many lots throughout the city. And so appreciate you working to make that happen. And we'll also be voting to deny the appeal. Thanks.
Thank you so much. See no one else in queue. I will, all those in favor for Councilmember Allison's motion to deny the appeal, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. And now, Councilmember, maybe you can join us back. All right.
Thank you.
All right. We will now move on our discussion item. First is a conditional use permit for 1801 Nicollet Avenue. This item was continued from our previous meeting to allow applicant time to meet with community stakeholders. We will have already had a presentation and public hearing, but I'm going to ask Lindsay Silas from CBED Planning to give us update on this matter.
Good afternoon, Chair Osman, members of the committee. I'm Lindsay Silas from CPED Planning. At the last BIZ meeting, you had instructed the applicant for this project to meet with the community. That meeting was held on October 3rd. The neighborhood provided a list of recommended conditions to the applicant, and the applicant responded with their reactions to that list of recommended conditions, both of which are in the memo that you should all have in front of you right now. Staff discussed the recommended list of conditions with the applicant to try to come to consensus on some of those conditions that they might be voluntarily willing to enter into as part of the conditional use permit application, and came up with 2 conditions that the applicant was amenable to. They are in front of you and underlined in the memo. Those conditions are that the applicant shall provide 1 drop-off space in the surface parking lot on site, which shall be clearly signed as a drop-off space only, and that the applicant shall appoint a community liaison officer who will serve as the primary contact for local businesses and residents, and that the contact information for said officer shall be posted in an area that's visible to the public. There were a number of operational requests from the community about staffing ratios and just operational details that the applicant didn't feel comfortable having applied to the conditional use permit approval as conditions, but that will be worked out along the way. And like, for example, they have a security plan. They're going to have security staff at all times, but they don't know exactly what that ratio to their clients at any one moment is going to be. So I am happy to stand for any questions about that.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Allison.
Thank you, Chair Osman. Just a few questions real quick before we kind of move on with our business here. The ability for this use to occur here is still, regardless of what we do here, dependent on the state licensing this use. Is that our understanding? Is that our essentially our understanding?
Yeah, so they proposed to establish a recuperative care facility, which requires a specific license from the state of Minnesota, and they are, planning to pursue that once they have the approval from the city. I think you heard at the last meeting that there has been a pause at the state level on processing those applications, so it may take some time for them to receive their license, but that is certainly an important part of the process for them to begin open up and establish.
And so even if we deny the appeal here, it's not like this facility is going to open tomorrow. They still have to get their license from the state.
Correct, yep. So they will need to file the conditional use permit with Hennepin County. Once that's filed after any decision becomes final, they would need to apply for any building permits that may be needed to convert the existing space into spaces that are appropriate for the specific use in the building code. And kind of while they're doing that, can be applying for their state licensure at the same time. And so it won't be until the building permits are issued, the work is done, the certificates of occupancy are issued, and the license is issued that the use could open their doors.
And then this is a question for our attorneys, but I just want to make sure I understand this, is that we don't have a lot of, there are no findings that we have found as a city that would be sufficient to deny this license, to deny this appeal.
Through the chair,
to grant this appeal.
Through the chair and Councilmember Ellison, I would agree with that. I haven't been presented with anything I think that would displace the staff recommendation and the work that they've done here. Certainly some additional conditions have been added, and I would note that a lot of concerns that I've heard have to do with, and even in some of the community's proposed conditions, have to do with operational concerns, staffing ratios, those sorts of things. Those, I believe, would be things that are most properly dealt with in the licensure at the state level, and I would encourage anyone with the city or with the community to make robust contact with the state with regard to this license and what they think would be appropriate in a recuperative care facility, because that's where that jurisdiction would lie.
Thank you. So, I guess I'll just, for the sake of the record and for the public, I'll just say, in allowing this and denying this appeal, it doesn't mean that this use is going to be opened and operational tomorrow, and that from our it sounds like there's still opportunity to advocate at the state level if there are general concerns that are outside of what the city scope is, and I'd say operations of a facility like this is outside of what we're here to consider now, and if we were to grant this appeal, we would be submitting ourselves maybe to some legal exposure that maybe we don't have a lot of grounds to stand on. And so, for that reason, I'm going to move to deny the appeal, but I'm also going to move the two additional conditions that were laid out by staff. And so, I've got this memorandum here. That adds as points 3 and 4. The applicant shall provide one drop-off space in the surface parking lot on site, which shall be clearly signed as a drop-off space only. And 4, the applicant shall appoint a community liaison officer who will serve as the primary contact for local businesses and residents, and the contact information for said officer shall be posted in an area that is visible to the public. And so, with that, I hope my colleagues can understand. I know that there's always a desire to be responsive to complaints, but we have an obligation to take on the matter in front of us, and some of the nature of the complaints are outside of the matter that is in front of us. And I think that to the extent that we can, we address it through this without exposing ourselves legally. And so that's my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Ellison. I wanted to speak about this item. It's located in my district, Ward 6. I think the services the state is trying to provide to our residents are very, very important. This will be a program that will, help homeless folks that end up going to the hospital when they get out so they can finish their medication and so on, they have a place to go. And that is just a decent way of treating any patient. So I definitely support the program, and I hope that the state makes that decision quicker and get the program. But I do completely understand the resident concerns. I have been meeting with them. This is an area that have had a lot of challenges of public safety, that had businesses that are struggling. There's a lot of challenging social stuff that really going on in that area. So in my conversation with the resident, they do support this kind of services, but they just want to work with the applicant. They want to work with anybody who's trying to provide services in this area. But I think it's the applicant that has the opportunity to answer those questions and make sure that this is going to be your neighbors. Providing services in this area, there are people that are already here. They're open to welcoming many people, but it's your ability and opportunity to really step up and make sure that everyone is happy in that area, and you are engaged in the business community, you are engaged in the neighborhood, the resident that call this place home. All right, I'll call Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Osman. And, I'll also be supporting the motion to deny the appeal today based on the facts that are in front of us, which is our decision-making ability on this issue in a quasi-judicial hearing. However, I think that this conditional use permit, the second one that we've had now come before the committee for recuperative care facilities, leaves us with a lot of questions about the Department of Human Services permitting process, and it's really concerning that the DHS permitting is on hold while we're doing work here at the city. And it is a chicken and an egg situation, because in order to get the DHS permit, an operator needs to have the facility to use, and so that does come first. However, we're left wondering, when will the permitting resume at this date and under what conditions? And so I just wanted to tell committee members that I did make an ask of our intergovernmental relations team, copying in the chair of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, so we can have a meeting with the Department of Human Services as soon as possible and understand what their plans are for resuming permitting these facilities, and then we can discuss as a council appropriately with more information about how to address more applications as they come in, and have more information about the operating conditions and where our jurisdictions lie between the city and the county and the state. So welcome more conversation with committee members about how to address that together.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Chair. I also agree with Councilmember Cashman and Osmond about this kind of loophole that has appeared with the DHS permitting and on our city responsibility in this. I am all for helping people. Every day, every week, every month, every year, we have to help people. But we also have to have a structure to do that. And right now, we do not have that. So I'll be voting no on this today. But I'll also be working with my fellow council members to come up with a solution to close this loophole and make this a smoother process. Because these services are needed, but we kind of got ambushed by the state. We got caught by surprise on this permitting. We need to have more control over how this happens in our city. Thank you.
Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Osman. I did want to ask our staff, should the state not grant a license, what happens to the site? What happens to this conditional use permit that if we end up granting it?
Chair Osman, Councilmember Chowdhury, if the state does not grant a permit for a recuperative care facility, the applicant would have the opportunity to amend their conditional use permit if they decided to use this space for some other use. And if that use was, if they wanted to use it for a permitted use, they would be able to establish that just like they would with any other permitted use. If they decided they wanted to receive some other type of licensure through DHS, that would potentially require another conditional use permit or an amendment to their conditional use permit for the emergency shelter. So if there's any change that would require a different type of emergency shelter or something that would also require a conditional use permit. It would either require an amendment to their conditional use permit, which would require going back to Planning Commission, or potentially a new conditional use permit, or if it was a permitted use, it could just be established in the space without any land use applications.
Thank you. And then, just for my understanding, is this conditional use permit time limited at all? Should the pause be for a long duration of time?
Sure. Chair Osmond, Councilmember Chowdhury, conditional use permits are tied to the land itself, and they run with the land in perpetuity. So it would not be time limited in any way or able to be revoked in any way, but because any changes to the conditional use permit would require an amendment to that conditional use permit, that does allow the city future review if there were changes, requests to increase the number of beds, requests to increase or to change the type of use.
Thank you. I will just make my comments now. I am supportive of this type of use, and just with the facts before us, as many of my fellow committee members have shared, I will be supporting the denial of the appeal. I am, in my role as Intergovernmental Relations Chair, have also made the ask to kind of get more clarity on what this pause means, what's the duration of the temporary enrollment hold at the state, getting a better understanding of what's the process of licensure, what is the oversight that goes into the state's processes, what's considered. For me, I think I agree with many of the comments that council members have shared up here. You look at the recuperative care page on the DHS website, and the last time it's been revised is April 26th of 2024, and that's when they, I presume, instated the temporary hold. And I think this is definitely a moment where our teams need to do a better job of talking and figuring out what the process is, especially because we want to be able to see these types of facilities operate within our city. We want to be able to have oversight. We also know that applicants that are applying for this type of use are putting time, capital into projects like this. We know that there are patients and clients that are in need of these types of services. So I look forward to kind of figuring out what is our path forward and getting some clarity on some of these questions that we have here. And that concludes my comments, Chair.
Thank you so much. See no one else to speak with Councilmember Allison's motion to deny the appeal and grant a conditional use permit. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed say nay. Nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. And now we save the best for the last. Our next discussion item is presentation from Twin Cities Housing Alliance. I welcome Kathy Barnett, accompanied by, I believe, Dr. Eric Anthony Johnson from Aon. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Osmond and council members, for having us here today. My name is Kathy Capone-Bennett. I'm the Executive Director of Twin Cities Housing Alliance. I'm joined by two of our board members, Dr. Eric Anthony Johnson, who is the President and CEO of Aon, and PJ Hill.
Could you remove this screen? There's wrong presentation on there.
Oh, I can do that.
All right.
I should be able to do that. I'm sorry. I should have done that first.
You're fine. Thank you. Continue,
And
please.
also joined by PJ Hill, who is managing partner of PGMA Development Partners. Also in the audience, just to recognize our board president, Rob Bader with Bader Companies. So today we will discuss some of the critical housing issues facing our region and explore opportunities for collaboration with the City Council to address these challenges. The Twin Cities Housing Alliance, or TCHA, advocates for local and regional housing policies that help create an affordable, equitable, economically vital, and environmentally stable future. We are a coalition of housing providers and advocates committed to creating and maintaining safe, quality housing across Minneapolis and the entire Twin Cities region. We have a broad range of housing experts as part of our 90-plus member organization, from large and small profit developers who deliver a range of housing options to nonprofit developers, owners, operators, and everything in between, including labor, banks, finance, construction, legal, etc. Our members are locally owned companies who have been building, owning, managing, and partnering with the public sector to ensure that the city and the region meet the housing needs now and into the future. Many are second, third, and fourth generation families who are committed to the work, care about the people who live in their buildings, care about the success of the city and the region, and have seen and experienced the ebbs and flows of the housing market. Our coalition is focused on balancing the needs of the residents, housing providers, and the broader community to create a sustainable housing ecosystem. We believe that affordable housing should benefit everyone, residents, housing providers, and the surrounding community, and we work collaboratively with stakeholders to achieve that balance. Our work focuses on three main pillars. We call these the 3 Ps: preserving, supporting, and enhancing our naturally occurring affordable housing to ensure it remains quality housing for all, producing more units across the entire housing spectrum, from deeply affordable units to market rate units, all while considering the protection of the most vulnerable residents who are at the greatest risk of displacement. As you will hear, continuing to increase housing supply to meet demand helps keep our housing stock affordable across the entire housing ecosystem, even those at the lowest of incomes. With 90% of our housing stock in the region built, owned, and operated by the private sector, we cannot achieve these goals without the strong partnership with community leaders, policymakers like you, and industry experts. First, I want to applaud the City of Minneapolis for being a leader across the region and nation by focusing on increasing housing supply over the past several years, at the same time targeting resources for income-restricted affordable units. As you will see, that has paid off in keeping rents stable and ensuring there are options and opportunities to support a growing region. Also, the city has addressed the changing market forces with such recent ordinance amendments or modifications made to encourage conversion of vacant buildings to housing. This is a great example of a successful partnership working with industry leaders to solve this crisis. And the action you took tonight to support that missing middle housing is a testament to your commitment, and we thank you. In a recent conversation with members of those industry leaders that worked on the conversion ordinance with you, they noted that the city across the river will be much more challenged to implement such a collaborative effort effectively due to their rent stabilization policy, which dilutes the benefits provided by those changes. Therefore, we applaud you for committing to options that increase housing supply while maintaining and enhancing affordability. So how do we do this work? We support policymakers by providing data, technical expertise, and resources to drive informed decision-making. We foster collaboration by partnering with cities and stakeholders to align efforts and develop joint solutions backed by data and expertise on the ground. Finally, we catalyze solutions by advocating for local and regional policies that address housing challenges head-on. We want to be your partner, and rather than being an organization of no, 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 we want to work through these issues with practical, market-based solutions with common goals and outcomes. I have included in your information what we provide, a range of resources designed to assist housing providers and policymakers in navigating today's housing challenges. These include infographics, primers, and other data-driven tools to support those decision-making, those informed decision-making. In particular, I'd like to point out our most recent tool, the one that looks like this. It's called the Housing Development and Finance Infographic that tracks the path of a typical journey to plan, design, fund, and build an average market rate 250-unit rental project. It outlines the complexity of the process and provides information on the trade-offs developers make in partnership with cities to achieve mutual goals. We encourage you to widely share this information and other resources, and welcome working with you to dive into the process in more detail if you so desire. So the housing market in Minneapolis and across the region are facing some significant challenges. It has been indicated that our region needs 18,000 new housing units annually through 2030, a 30% increase over the past levels to meet the growing population and demand for housing. Minneapolis has been a leader in supporting that goal. Unfortunately, we've seen a sharp decline in multifamily housing permits in the last year, meaning that new housing supply is at a low. Our industry conversations indicate that it may be some time before we see new development in the city. Even with the city's strong support, the headwinds in the industry are limiting new capital investment. With costs per market rate, an average unit of a $350,000 per unit, and comps that are used to dictate financing at $250,000 per unit, there remains a significant gap. The long-term availability and affordability is at risk as fewer units are coming online, and even in the planning process. The decline of new permits could create increased supply shortages very quickly, putting additional pressure on the housing market and making it even harder to maintain affordability. Fewer new units of any type will put pressure on the increased competition for affordable and income-restricted units needed for those lower-income residents. So what are we seeing with regards to rents? Since 2013, inflation-adjusted rents in Minneapolis have actually declined by 9.6%, with the broader region seeing a slight increase of less than 0.2%. While the city support for new supply has kept this rent growth relatively stable in the short term, it is even more important now to remain laser-focused on a proactive approach to increase supply to ensure future affordability and prevent rent spikes as demand increases. I thought it might be helpful. I love this slide because this pie chart can shift based upon different shifts in the costs of where rent goes. So let's take a little bit closer look at how rent is allocated across the different needs for running a business and owning and managing housing. For a typical private market rate project, only an average of 6% on every dollar goes towards owners' investors that they use to reinvest in other projects. This is much less for nonprofit sector, where only about 2 cents on every dollar is allocated. Overall, 30 cents of every dollar goes towards operating expenses, and this is where we are seeing the most increases and pressures on the industry. As an example, rent ensures that properties remain livable and safe by covering routine repairs and maintaining quality standards. A significant portion of rent goes towards the salaries and benefits of frontline workers, like property managers and maintenance teams who keep day-to-day operations running smoothly. Taxes, insurance, and debt service are three of the biggest ongoing expenses. These together account for a substantial portion of rent, leaving limited room for other expenses. As an example, we have seen insurance costs skyrocket for the industry at nearly 30 to even sometimes for some of the nonprofit operators, 50%. We have heard that those are stabilizing a little, but with the recent climate issues that we're seeing, I don't see that those costs are going to come down significantly. As operating costs continue to rise without a corresponding increase in rental income, the balance of this allocation shifts, the pie shifts, which makes it difficult to maintain the quality and safety of housing. So finally, before I call up Dr. Johnson and PJ Hill, just to summarize what the most pressing challenges are that we're seeing in the industry. Escalating operating costs, security, maintenance, and utility costs are rising sharply. For example, providing 24-hour security can cost up to $400,000 annually, which was an average of more like $80,000, which is especially difficult for income-restricted properties to absorb. Many properties, including NOAA and income-restricted housing, face ongoing safety concerns and disruptive unlawful resident behavior, affecting both existing property residents and surrounding communities, This makes it difficult to maintain a stable and secure environment, increasing vacancies in many of the properties. Frontline staff are being asked to take on more responsibilities and handle situations beyond their training, from managing disruptive resident behavior through conflict mediation to maintaining safety. Burnout and turnover rates are high, especially as staff often serve as de facto social workers, police, and mental health providers without the proper training or support. These have been a significant increase in the need for some level of supportive services and housing. In the last 7 years, the industry has seen an increase in supportive needs, with cases going from an average of 30 per year to 800 cases per year. That's a staggering 370% increase per year in those needs for some supportive services. This is being felt not only in properties where the supportive care is a key part of their management, but in NOAA housing and in mixed income properties where staff are not equipped to manage such issues. The housing challenges we've discussed don't just affect individual residents, they have ripple effects that affects the entire neighborhood as well as the entire city. To solve these challenges, collaboration between housing providers and the City Council is essential. We believe there are several areas where we can work together, and we look forward to that. So I'll pause now and ask Dr. Johnson to come up, and then PJ to tell their stories and why it's important to the vitality of the work that we do to partner with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Eric Anthony Johnson, President and CEO at Aon. Just give you a little context. We own about right under 6,000 housing units, of which 3,500 or so are located throughout the Minneapolis area. 56% of our families are individuals of color. We tend to have long-term residents. I'm just going to make this quick because I know you hear a lot. Let me just talk about this quickly. As a nonprofit housing developer, I can say with confidence, I can speak on behalf of our counterparts. We're actually in a crisis situation. So when I talk about over close to 6,000 units, expect organizations like Aon to probably drop down close to 2,500 units, and let me tell you why. Operating cost, it's sort of like a combination of all these issues hitting at one time. One, increased security costs. Depending on our property, we could be at $10,000 a month in security costs, depending on the property. Number two, we have moved from, on average, $1,000 to turn a unit to get ready to rent again. We're averaging close to $3,000, from about $3,000 to $7,000 to simply turn a unit. We have found the eviction of hard individuals that are causing terror in our developments, that's actually making it worse for the good people living in our properties. But let me tell you this, after the eviction moratorium, we lost close to 63% of our revenue just sheerly to non-payment of rent. Let me tell you what that means. That means the lenders are calling. Dr. Johnson, where's our payment? Where's our payment? So we've been in a dogfight with lenders working to try and offset what we see as a cataclysmic situation in terms of loss of units. So I'm giving you sort of a context because I can speak with confidence in terms of what we're dealing with and with some of our other counterparts. You probably heard Kamabon, PPL, Beacon, Catholic Charities. We're all basically in the same boat. I don't know how you prepare a pro forma to operate. We've never, ever in the history of Aon had a break-even point. That's not what we do. We don't look at units to raise rents. We try to keep the rents at a reasonable price point, but it's actually becoming difficult to really do that. So I'm not going to take too much time because I know time is limited, and I'm open to speak to anyone at any time, but I just wanted to give you sort of a snapshot of the challenges. And what we do not have on our side is actually time. So as you think about housing policy, you're thinking about the challenges, think about these things that's happening. And let me just close with this. I will also say something else is broken. I don't know what it is, but it's becoming a point of sheer disrespect for property. And it's coming to a point where it's becoming difficult for the good residents to enjoy a quality place to live. So I'll just leave you with that. And PJ, you want to come on up? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, it's hard to follow Dr. Eric. That's a serious man. But I'm PJ Hill. Thank you guys today. I just want to share my experience. I'm a community member, born and raised in South Minneapolis. Done everything in my life in Minneapolis and just a product of affordable housing. So I stand here today as a community member who is in ownership and own all 30 to 50% of AMI properties and have faced tremendous challenges. And I'm not big like a Sherman and Associates or a Aon. I'm just a small guy, and it's been very tough for me, and I'm starting to feel the ripple effects that's coming down. And so to have an organization like Twin Cities Housing Alliance, where I can have a seat at a table and have a voice, obviously if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And at times I feel like I'm on the menu. So I feel that a public-private partnership is essential to people like me being able to make it, to give hope to a community, to have ownership. And I've dealt with some of the tough struggles that Dr. Eric talked about as well, from security issues. I own properties in the toughest neighborhoods. So Park in Franklin, 38th in Chicago, Lake in 13th. So some of the toughest areas. And I've dealt with all of these challenges. So I'm coming here today not to talk so much about all of the challenges, but to more to say that if we want to go alone, then we can go far. But if we want to really, really go far, we got to go together. And I think this is an opportunity to partner and to address these issues together as an organization and as the council. And we have the opportunity to really change. But we can see that there is a tipping point, and we're almost in a crisis, and it's getting tough. And I think the last thing I want to say, if some people from the community who are some of the best and brightest from our community, like myself, can't make it, then we're really going to be in a crisis, and there can be no true community development and community ownership. And so I'm here today to just stress the importance of open-mindedness and strategic partnerships and partnering with people who have expertise, and just willing for us to all lean in to really make a difference. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Kathy and Dr. Eric, for that presentation. I will open to my colleagues if they have any comments or questions. I see Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this great presentation, Kathy. And Mr. Hill, I really appreciate that your remark about if the best and brightest can't make it. You are the best and the brightest, and if you're struggling, we have to figure out how to stop that struggle. Dr. Johnson, when you first started, we ran into scheduling conflicts. There was snowstorms and ice storms, and it just never worked out. So, perhaps we could have that meeting, and I can dig into some of these questions I have. You've raised some really interesting points. Because as you were speaking, I wrote down the operating expense ratio. In the projects that some of the bigger housing developers own and operators in my area, it's the maintenance that's suffering, the security that's suffering, and to your point, the good people there now are moving out, and they're willing to pay higher rents elsewhere just to get away from the destructive tenants that are in these buildings. So I look forward to meeting you in person and discussing at length what your ideas about how we can help as a city.
All right, look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I put myself in there, and really good presentation. And my question, first of all, Ayan, I really want to thank you, Doctor. Your property and like other nonprofit organizations like Common Bond and PPL and others provide housing for many folks that are not able to go in the market and rent, especially in my district. I have plenty of properties that Ayan owned that my residents live, and I had meetings, safety meetings, profit management meeting, and city has been challenged last 4 years. And what I'm getting and what I'm seeing and what I heard is that organizations like yours and organizations that are nonprofit that used to attract more, development to trying to take properties that are in bad condition and change it to a better condition. I actually right now letting go some apartments, letting go some buildings because they can't keep up. And I look at the chart. There's huge expense. The two expensive things are operating and taxes, and that's not just including the employment, and it doesn't include any other thing. So, are you seeing more nonprofit organizations that are not able to keep up and they are letting go one of those scatter sites? And because you don't just provide housing, you also provide services, and housing and services kind of go along.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can tell you what's happening. At its core, we are still real estate development companies. And while none of us, when I say none of us, I'm talking about the organizations in the affordable space, we rarely want to sell a property. But here's the problem. It's even difficult to even try and sell a property because they're not cash flowing, the capital improvement needs, the maintenance needs, the sheer destruction, the security costs. Try sitting with an investor who may have interest in the property and showing them the line item on security. That alone can tip the property from having the ability to sell. So I can speak with confidence that Aon and its other counterparts, because we all talk, we're sitting around trying to figure out if we can hold what we have. If not, I do know for a fact we will try and move properties along for the sake of long-term viability via the organization. It's not something we want to do, but that's what we're dealing with.
I hope you hold on what you have and continue to provide housing for residents in Minneapolis. There are a lot of low-income families that rely on these properties, and I don't know how they will make it if a nonprofit affordable housing organization went around, especially in the district, dense neighborhood in my district. Yeah, things have been challenged the last 4 years, not just city Minneapolis having some security challenges, and also the development and the material cost because of COVID. Things have skyrocketed, and it costs a lot. So what, other than the suggestions you have given, we have tried to do what we can to make sure that we are doing the tenant protection, we're keeping people housed, but we continue to see a lot of people that are unhoused, it's not just economic, but there's also mental health and addiction, other things that lead to it. Why are we seeing more folks that are building encampments and being unhoused? And what can we do immediately as a council members to really address some of the unhoused folks, unhoused individuals that really need help as soon as possible? Thank you.
That's a question. You want to take it?
Is that a question? Sure, go ahead.
Chair Osmond, is that a question?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll let Dr. Eric talk about this. This is why we stress the importance of the public-private partnership and doing as much as we can, coming together with people who are all across the housing continuum. Because I think it's not just how do we get that first rank people transitioning from homelessness, because those are the people that I really take in a lot of my properties. I work with a lot of nonprofits who support people who come from homelessness to be in my properties. But I think it's thinking about the whole continuum. When Kathy talks about a slowdown in production, it starts with the market rate, but then it just comes down all the way to smaller developers like myself or the nonprofits. So we need to think holistically about the continuum, and that's why the dialogue, I think, needs to continue to be open. And then together, I think we can find those solutions across the whole continuum. Dr. Eric, if you want to add anything to that?
I just want to say that every crisis provides an opportunity. And I think for just not the city of Minneapolis, it's an opportunity to be creative. Think about every innovative way you can think about solving the housing problem. Who says we have to continue to operate in the same box over and over? So we do a lot of supportive housing. We house some of the hard to house. We broke ground, opened up a building in Edina, 76 units, and we have a percentage of those individuals hard to house. So what I'm really getting at is this is going to come down to all of us. Quit thinking about, I'm not speaking to you necessarily, I'm thinking about as a system. Stop thinking in the same box. There are ways, there's opportunities for us to think about this creative. So I'll just throw that out there, and look for other questions.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to give my colleagues an opportunity to speak. Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Osman, and it's hard to say thank you for this presentation because it's heartbreaking, actually. I mean, these are some of the most critical parts of our affordable housing continuum, and to hear that the struggle, and, you know, Kathy, we spoke, and PJ, Dr. Eric, you mentioned that the turnover costs are like between up from 1,000 sort of contextually to 3 to 7,000.
Yes.
What do you think is driving that increase?
So let me say this. We've been really trying to figure that out. We've been sort of analyzing, thinking about the last several years after the eviction moratorium and everything that took place, residents staying in properties longer. But okay, we see that, but we're also seeing a sheer disrespect for property. And we don't know where that's coming from, right? So to go from 1,000 to 3,000 to 7 to 8 to 10,000, depending on the unit, we're finding units being left behind that is just almost unimaginable to repair. So normally you would just like change out the carpets, paint, you know, get ready to turn. We have to now go in everything from walls to carpets to new appliances. Depending on the cabinets, we have to change everything out. So that starts to add up. So we don't necessarily have the direct answer, but we do know something from a lack of property is taking place. That's the best way we can say it. We originally so depended on the transition from the pandemic with individuals staying in the properties longer due to the eviction moratorium, but we really passed that now, and we still are seeing the same thing. What's so problematic about that is we may have a representative from the legislature touring our property, and we'll say, hey, Dr. Johnson, you guys have all these vacant units, why aren't you leasing? Wow, because we don't have the money to do the repairs to bring them back online. So long story short, we don't necessarily know. We can only make some general assumptions about what's going on, but it's a problem.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna comment that it's not just you got to spend $6,000 to rent the unit, but it takes time. Nobody else can move in until that property is renovated, and so it's a huge challenge. I hope that we can be that partner to be able to help maintain the properties that are already on board. And, I just spoke earlier about a PPL project that's coming online at 31st and Nicollet. And, I'm concerned that it's going to be subject to some of the same types of challenges moving forward. So we have a really, really tough conundrum to try to figure out. And as Councilmember Osman mentioned, there's this whole unsheltered situation that is compounding things. So, really grateful for the work that you folks are doing and your counterparts and other affordable housing spaces. PJ, you're doing yeoman's work sort of solo without the infrastructure that some of these larger organizations have. So hats off to you as well, and keep up the good work, and I hope that we can be a good partner in this process.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Osman. Thank you all for coming before us today and expressing a lot of good data and just your experiences from different pieces along the housing continuum. I'm really interested in the unaffordability of home ownership in our city, and I'm wondering if you work with any condo developers or have worked with condo developers and can help me understand why we have seen such a decrease in the development of new condos in the city or ownership opportunities.
So Councilmember Cashman, Chair Osman, As an organization, the Twin Cities Housing Alliance, we're only 3 years old.
Okay.
Our focus has been where we can get most bang for the buck, which is multifamily rental. That doesn't mean that we don't care about ownership, which we do. It's an important part of the whole entire housing continuum. And we work with partners. The Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity is a strategic alliance of ours. And so we really care about that and help in any way we can. The condo issue is one that we would like to take on. It is a state legislative warranty issue that increases the amount of capital that is needed, not only for the developer, but for all their subcontractors down the road. And they're not willing to take that risk of being called back year 9 3/4 for a problem that maybe could have been solved a lot earlier. In 2016, there was a coalition, a group of cities, the industry leaders that got together and proposed modifications to the legislature. There was a slight modification, but it didn't go far enough. Basically, what it did was allowed like 11, the very, very expensive condo development, but it still hasn't, but it isn't enough. It hasn't gone far enough to open up the more first-time buyer condo type development or even middle income type development. So it is something we hope to work on, and when we have the capacity and when and if we do, I would hope that we would work with you on that.
Thank you so much for sharing that context. I represent Ward 7 is a very dense area in Loring Park, and downtown especially. We do have some private housing providers there that aren't the most present and in many cases actually negligent of their properties and creating unsafe conditions for residents. And so some of my thinking is how can we help the residents in these affordable rental units to access a home ownership opportunity that's at their level so that they can actually generate wealth from the investment they're making in their housing year after year, including myself as a renter who pays an out-of-state capital assets company thousands of dollars every year and I don't see a return, right? And so that's kind of my interest there, and look forward to continuing that conversation with you if you have additional contacts for me, because I have raised this as something I'd like to support taking on at the state level if there's interest from legislators. And yeah, just want to thank you for being here today.
We can be in touch.
I would like to just say that, I mean, Councilmember Jenkins knows this. This is like my goal. My goal is to create 1,000 women and minority multimillionaires. And I work in the capital markets right now, but I know housing is the number one way that you can do it. So my goal is, as I work with tenants, to work them through the flows of housing, 18 to 24 months if they're ready, to help them get into home ownership, because that's how my mom and dad did it. We live right next to Little Earth, and they've been doing it for 35 years. So when you're ready to do that, I think that's a real conversation, and that's how we start to change the dynamics of communities, because people don't respect what they don't own. So you wonder why people tear stuff up, because you have no ownership. But if you own these things and have a stake in it, then you treat it a little bit different.
Right.
And if you have a path to economic liberation and freedom, then it changes the dynamics of how you think about your community.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for presenting today. Really appreciated the information. I am going to be printing out that guide on development. I thought that was really interesting. I appreciate your mission, produce, preserve, protect, and I feel like we have had a lot of discussions as a city, especially this last year, especially while we were dealing with the 2040 lawsuit and then had to go to the state legislature and address the concerns that we were facing in regards to maintaining our comprehensive plan. So we've been talking a lot about production and why that's necessary. I was hoping if you could touch on the preserve and protect, like how since the establishment of your organization, how have you been following through with that part of your vision and enhancing existing housing, preserving natural occurring affordable housing, and then protecting the residents who are most vulnerable? Because while we know costs for operations materials are up, costs of living is also going up while wages remain stagnant. And we are in a housing crisis, but even deeper, we are in an affordable housing crisis.
Chair Osman, thank you, Councilmember Chowdhury, for that question. So we have a fairly robust policy framework that outlines the different policy levers that we think help within each one of those Ps. So in preservation, providing and supporting resources for existing NOAA properties to be able to keep their properties and maintain their affordability. I know you are, the 4D program has been an extremely successful program that now the state has tied towards affordability, but you have your own project as well. And that has been a significant boost to be able to allow existing property owners to make improvements while keeping the rents and committing to rent income restricted rents for 10 years. And that's a fabulous way to do that. Using your Affordable Housing Trust Fund to support renovation of larger projects, or even maybe looking at that in a way that helps to support some operating subsidies for the nonprofits. On the protection of those most vulnerable, we do believe targeting resources to those who are most vulnerable and who need that help is a very wonderful strategy, whether it's through housing choice vouchers, working with your PHA. There is some new money coming down from the state for additional vouchers that can specifically connect to those people is a great way to do that. And overall, we do feel like the production helps that filtering to allow and have more opportunity at those lower levels. So that's just a few ways, but I'd be happy to meet with you to talk through our policy framework anytime. So
Let me just add one quick point to that. So at Aon, we are arguably the leaders in the naturally occurring affordable housing space, right? We own arguably some of the big block NOAA properties in the region. But here's the problem we're facing. You probably remember this in 2017, 2016, when the concierge was bought in Richfield and everyone lost their home, right? It was a big deal. And NOAA preservation was part one, was by acquisition. No discussions about sources that would be available for needed capital improvements, right? So I think where we need to go as a community, as a region, as a state, is start thinking about how do we create a source. You can acquire, but if you're operating these things, you're going to probably destroy your organization like we're doing, killing our organization because we've been trying to preserve. So some thought has to be given to a source that is a grant base of scale, and Councilmember Osman, you would know, that will deal with the capital improvements in these older NOAA buildings. Otherwise, you're putting residents in an untenable situation. Pay your rent, everything's leaking. Pay your rent, live in bad conditions. So just think about those types of strategies, because you can acquire, because here's where we're headed. As the city continues to build out, future targets are going to be bigger NOAA properties for redevelopment. So if you understand what I'm saying, think about side by side. If you're acquiring, you have to have a source. Otherwise, your options are basically try and raise rent to get money to provide upgrades, and that's not what we want to do, and I think what the council would want to do. So.
Chair, if I may continue, I really appreciate those answers. I'm also going to offer something to add to your Protect mission. Really want you to take a look into it. In protecting vulnerable people, both in the people that you're providing housing to, you're also creating jobs when it comes to construction. We know that within the construction industry, there is oftentimes egregious human rights violations, workplace violations, and working towards making commitments with those who are a part of your alliance and upholding dignified working conditions, making sure that wage theft doesn't occur, making sure that labor, especially immigrant labor, isn't exploited. I think if there's a way for you to formalize that type of commitment, that would be a huge step forward in that protect category.
I think you're totally right. Maybe if I can add to that, this is why it's important for Twin Cities Housing Alliance to just not only have housing providers on there. you have unions, you have different people who represent the different aspect and sectors within real estate that come together, because everybody needs to have those protection. And like I said, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. So how do we make sure people like that have a chance to be at the table, to voice it, and so everybody has that equal right? And we do that at Twin Cities Housing Alliance. And in partnership with you guys, we want to continue to do that at a larger scale.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Chowdhury. Your last point, building dignity and respect. That's what you were referring to? Yeah. Wonderful, yeah. Councilmember Allison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and want to thank you guys for this presentation. I don't like to be a Debbie Downer, because I view myself as solutions oriented, as I know this group is, and these comments are maybe more for my colleagues and the public more than for you all. But when we talk about needing to get creative to solve this problem, the truth is that I cannot envision a world where the city can solve this problem. Right? Like, the truth is that, and I don't, and that's not to be defeatist. It's just like, you talk about going from 6,000 units to 2,500. If we want to keep you whole, the city cannot bankroll that. I know you're not asking, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm more just sort of laying out, when we talk about the depth of this problem, I really want us to lean into our roles, not necessarily as policymakers on this dais, but as advocates for constituents more broadly, intergovernmentally. Because we're seeing the same issues that every city's seeing, right? Downtown values are decreasing. We're seeing a lot of issues where we had to build more strategy that had sort of a glory period of 5 to 7, maybe 10 years, and now the build more strategy is out of money, and now only subsidized units are being built, and subsidies running out, right? We have tremendous staff here at the city. Last cycle, we had a staff member, Angie Skildum, who talked about finding $9 million additional dollars to put into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund over 3 years, which is amazing. $9 million probably doesn't solve this problem. I can't imagine it does, sure. Right? And so even these Herculean efforts that we see from very brilliant people, I don't know how much they're moving the needle. And we know that every single organization that's facing this problem is going to be like, look, we need to, we either need to raise rents, which is unsustainable because there's only so many people that can pay, an endless raising of rent, and of course we want all of our organizations, especially all of our, mom and pop developers, all of our nonprofit developers. Of course, we want folks to remain whole. And so that's just to say, when I think about the kind of creativity that's going to be needed, it looks, if everyone's facing this problem, and if every municipality is facing this problem, we maybe have just run into an issue with how we fund housing in this country, and that's, and so I think, for as we move forward, I really would be looking to you all about how elected leaders can be advocates, whether it's for a federal strategy or for, obviously not absolving us of what we can do locally, but I also just want to say, the scale of this problem, I don't want folks who are watching or anyone to walk away thinking like, okay, with a little bit of can-do attitude and some creativity, the city of Minneapolis can undo this. We're sort of careening towards something that I think can be catastrophic. And when we talk about encampments increasing, we talk about homelessness increasing. When I hear the kinds of things that we're discussing, I'm imagining more people on the street, right? And not only that, but when I think about even some of the discussions we're having with the county, struggling to get programming for a number of programs that the community has come to just rely on, that's more people hitting the streets. And so what do our cities look like if that's what we head towards? And for things like security and these other costs, increases in turning the unit, security costs that have just ballooned. I remember after 2020 when I first started seeing basically every building moving to armed security, and nobody was really talking about it, and I was just thinking back then, like, how is this getting paid for? And well, we got our answer here, and the answer is that it's not sustainable. So, just wanted to highlight that and offer that this is going to continue to be a city that's really creative. It's going to continue to be a council that's very motivated, and I do believe that we have absolutely the best staff in the country, and I feel like the scale of this problem, the scope of this problem, if it's left city to city to solve this problem, then city by city, we're going to see a whole lot of failure. And so I want us to sort of put our collective brains together to think about, how big are we going and what is the strategy globally, and who do we need to be partnering with, not just here locally with public-private partnerships, but who do we need to be partnering with to move the needle on federal housing policy? So that's all. Not really a question there, but I just thank you guys for the presentation, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, again, thank you so much for coming, and see no further discussion. I will ask the clerk to receive and file that item. All right, seeing no further business before us, without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.